guys. Hello. Uh, Thanks for joining us, especially if you are this on time. Well done. I'm someone who is notoriously late, so I commend that.
I'm not, so thanks, guys.
We're very similar people, but also very different people.
Yeah.
I'm Laura, and hopefully by now I'm becoming a familiar face. And we have a new face with us.
I'm Danny. Hello.
Danny. We're very privileged today to be able to chat with you. We are going to have a little bit of a chit chat just for a few minutes to give people time to join us. So if you haven't already poured your gin, tonight's gin is from Adelaide. This is Prohibition Gin. I was like, at what point do I start making this just like a around Australia with Laura's gin collection? But that's what we're sipping tonight.
It could happen.
We're getting there, yeah. So Danny and I have our drinks. If you haven't got one yet, if you haven't made a cup of tea or poured a wine, please do so. And we will get started in just a couple of minutes. Very, very pleased to be presenting this topic and having this conversation with you tonight. I think it's a topic that's very near and dear to our hearts. And that's why you were at the top of my list when I was like, I want to chat a little bit more about mental health. And I was like, I know just who to ask.
Stop it. Yeah. Stop. Right at the start, making me embarrassed. That's a 1 minute in.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know how to get all the feels. So we're just going to be chatting a few little strategies. By no means are we experts. I don't think anyone's an expert in this, but we are pretty, I think, cognizant of our state of being, our mental health, our approach to things, and I guess our self-awareness. In that, well, we have to be because we have quite demanding roles. We work strictly in end-of-life care. And as we have people tell us daily, it is a hard role, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And I think one of the reasons it is rewarding is because we are mindful of these things, and we try to kind of have them in the back of our head when we're going about our day-to-day work.
Yeah, and I think both of us have experienced the pains that come with vet med, and it's been quite a journey for both of us in the kind of mental health space. I think it's really important that we continue to have these conversations and give people a little bit more than I think what I ever got. I know certainly when I came into vet nursing, it was very much something that I was conscious of. People throw around the words compassion fatigue and burnout, and was very worried of those things happening to me. Spoiler alert, they did. But I think there wasn't a lot out there then around this. So it feels really nice to bring some new things to the table.
For me, I think I experienced my own anxieties and my own sort of issues more so before I went into vet med. And I actually think that was my greatest gift in terms of kind of hitting a low point and then having to get to know myself at that low point and crawl my way back up. But I think what I've had a chance to do being in the role that I am in now, and also visiting so many vet clinics and having a bit more education in this, particularly with the hospice and palliative care certification that I did recently, I have had a chance to kind of think about why does compassion fatigue hit our industry so hard? Because obviously it is an issue for a lot of caring professions that are out there. And I graduated knowing that we were a profession that was very prone to compassion fatigue and burnout, but no one ever really explained like why are we so prone to that when we are such caring people? Why does it hit us so hard? And so I think today's presentation, we're just going to have a bit of a conversation about that and try and get some more discussion. As I said, we don't have all of the answers, but we think that it's a good start to at least kind of bring some ideas to the table and have a safe space to be able to talk about all of this. So moving through our presentation, if I can get these slides to work for me. Okay, so I'm Laura McGuffig. I am one of the lead veterinarians with Rest Your Paws, and I'm based here in Melbourne. As I just mentioned, I'm now palliative and hospice care certified. Yay! So that's my big achievement of the year. So yeah, that's me. I have quite an interest in, I think if I hadn't been a vet, I would have wanted to become a psychologist. So I like learning about how people think and why we act the way we do. So that's kind of, I have an interest in that, as well as this concept of veterinary sociology, which is a new kind of idea coming very much out of the States. So that's where my interests lie, and I feel very fortunate to be able to come on tonight and literally chat to you about stuff that I'm interested in. Danny, what about you? Who are you?
So I'm Danny. I am the practice manager here at Rest Your Paws. I was a vet nurse for about 15 years, close to, makes me sound old, before joining the Rest Your Paws team, GP, ECC, practice management, have gone through a wide variety of nursing roles in vet med. But I was full-time in ECC when I was diagnosed with burnout and compassion fatigue. From a licensed professional, not just me being like, I'm burnt out. It was a really scary time for me, and I actually left nursing for a little while before I realized that actually it was my passion and my love, and I didn't want these things to prevent me from doing that. So I've worked very hard on myself in regards to my own mental health, and I think that is kind of what pushed me to go and become a mental health first aider. Thank you, very new, but it's been really empowering to do that further education, and I feel really well equipped to be able to talk to everybody about it a little bit tonight.
And the final person that we have who is lurking in the background is Dr. Caitlin, and she helps us put this all together and makes sure that we know what we're doing technically. And yeah, we wouldn't be able to do this without her. We also want to send out a big thank you to Tim, who refuses to let us put his photo up, but Tim also is fundamental in making this actually happen for us tonight. So thanks to you both.
Thanks, guys.
So a little bit of housekeeping. You have added incentive to ask us questions or to comment throughout today's presentation. To do so, you can see the little comment button up the top there. Your added incentive to comment and ask us questions, which we will get to at the end, is, Danny?
Yay! So we have, for the holiday season, we thought we best incentivize people to really stump us with their questions. So we're going to give 4 $50 gift cards to the 4 best questions of the night. So you can pop your questions in throughout so you don't forget them, or pop them in at the end. And the people that come up with the best questions are going to win.
Yeah. So yeah, in the spirit of Christmas, you get presents. Sorry, I'm struggling to move this PowerPoint along. Okay, we're good. So a bit of a presentation overview. We'll try to add a bit of structure to this. I would say that these are topics that can be hard to add structure to and not just sort of get carried away in conversation, but we would like to actually frame it for you and give you some take homes that might actually help moving forward. So our focus will be prioritizing emotional balance. To do this, we're going to be exploring the concepts of compassionate detachment and exquisite empathy. We'll also be looking at some strengths-based approach in our thinking, as well as flexible thinking, finding closure through effective debriefing, and how does debriefing differ from venting? Because
I love a vent.
We all have a good vent, but debriefing is a little bit different, as well as then talking about some healthy boundaries and how to kind of advocate and set them. So to sort of start this presentation, I wanted to share this sort of little quote or message with you, and that is that the more that we know, the more comfortable we are with being present. And the idea behind starting this presentation with this is that we often don't have all of the answers, and often we don't actually need to have all of the answers. Sometimes just kind of arming ourselves with this knowledge and being a bit more in touch with ourselves and what other people might be going through around us, just having that understanding can help us make sense of the world without necessarily needing to respond or do things differently. So I think for me, it has been really fundamental in the role that I'm in kind of often companioning and in some ways even counseling sort of clients and families as they go through the loss of their pets. It's been really important for me to be quite comfortable with just being there and not necessarily being able to fix everything and have all the answers. Yeah. So for us, we're faced with a lot of challenges, particularly in end-of-life care. I think, as I said earlier, we're often sort of reminded that we're in a hard role. I think one of the reasons why I became so passionate about doing continued education in this field of veterinary medicine is because despite being told that I have such a hard job, I love it and I wouldn't want to do anything else. And I think I wanted to get into this role of presenting webinars and talking to different clinics and students because I wanted to share why I really enjoy what I do and what can people maybe do to be able to enjoy it better themselves.
Yeah.
But it is hard to kind of find job satisfaction and to find the positive in end-of-life care. And one of the reasons why that can be hard is because we do live in a very death-adverse culture. So this isn't just a veterinary medicine issue. This is a cultural issue in that we're not very comfortable with death. We're not very comfortable with grief. And I think we can always sort of struggle to handle our own emotions, let alone the emotions of others when we are trying to comfort other people or trying to be present with other people. And then finally, I think the biggest thing for us is that we have that fix-it mentality.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think as a nurse, when I first was, looking at this, my initial thought was, oh, I don't know that I need to fix it, but I need to know what to say because I need to say the right things because I need to make them feel better.
Yeah.
And it's not until you reframe it and you think, oh, that is a fix-it mentality. That is, I need to fix this situation.
Yeah.
I need to make this person feel better. I need to know the words to say to them to do that. Otherwise, I'm not only not good at my job, like I'm not a good enough person, but I can't fix this. So I think that's something that really rings true to me.
I think, for me, it was very comforting and kind of eye-opening. And I think this is probably Dr. Courtney who said this to me first, is that like it really doesn't matter what you say. It's actually the intent and the feeling that you convey behind what you're saying. As well as just this concept of sometimes just being a compassionate witness is enough. Just being present with people is enough. You don't actually have to know all the right things to say, and you're certainly not responsible for kind of fixing their grief or fixing, the difficult emotions that they might be going through. So speaking of those difficult emotions, we do just want to kind of briefly chat through some of the things that our clients experience, as well as things that we, as people that are caring for them and caring for their pets, we experience, I think, right alongside them. We spoke earlier about this today, Danny, and you said one of these in particular jumps out at you.
Yeah, traumatic grief is the one that I gravitate towards knowing exactly what that looks like. I think from working in emergency for so long, that's the one where I can see it. I can visualize it in my head of people that are going through that. That sudden, this has happened so suddenly, or something that is quite traumatic to see. The grief that follows that is so visceral. So it was definitely the one that I looked at and went, oh, yep, I know that one.
We had flashbacks. Yeah. Whereas for me, I think the concept of anticipatory grief jumps out at me quite a lot because I got into this role from doing palliative care with my own pets and also sort of helping my own family through the loss of our family pets. So the idea of having to say goodbye, I've also had pets with cognitive decline. And so the idea of kind of saying goodbye to them before they've even passed is really hard. And we do find that, especially with a lot of our palliative care clients, like they go through a lot of intense anticipatory grief. And sometimes that means that we end up saying goodbye to patients sooner than we might have otherwise, because, you know, the family isn't even able to enjoy the time they have with that pet because they have so much anticipation and anxiety and fear for the end. The pet loss in general is what we call disenfranchised grief, meaning that it's often not societally recognized. If we think about the fact that 30% of the population doesn't have pets, then people that experience pet loss are not going to have any kind of commiseration or empathy from those people. I would say even people that do own pets, we can often have a tendency to kind of not want to dwell on things and be like, well, that's part of life, that's what happens. And we can be a bit dismissive of that loss and of that grief. And the last one on this list, compounded grief. This is definitely something where you would really want to be looking at referring those families and those clients to a pet loss counselor or a grief counselor, because compounded grief is that grief overload. It's when that pet is what got them through the loss of the last pet or the loss of a family member, a human family member, or it's gotten them through the loss of a job or whatever it might be. That pet has been fundamental in helping them kind of move forward. And then when they lose that pet, they kind of have all of the past grief dug back up for them. And it can be really hard for anyone to move through that in a healthy manner. And it's certainly not something that an untrained professional is going to be able to kind of pull someone through. So it's definitely compounded grief, but I would say realistically, any kind of grief, owners and families should have the knowledge and should have the resources at their disposal to be able to reach out for more help. If anyone would like some more information about Rest Your Paws pet loss services and pet loss counselling, please just reach out to us. Our pet loss service is available for any owner. They don't have to have used our in-home service. And it can feel, I think, as a nurse, as a vet, as anyone in this industry, it can make us feel a lot more empowered and prepared if we do actually have information readily at hand to be able to give to owners that we can see are going through a hard time. I think it helps us let go of the responsibility of oh, well, I've got to help that person through this. It helps to kind of be armed with the information to say, actually, this isn't something that I am equipped to be able to kind of help you with. But I have some information, I have the resources here to be able to help guide you. So, and look, a lot of people obviously will not put their hand up for grief counselling, but just the act of you giving them the card, giving them the information and the option goes a long way in actually normalizing grief that is, by definition, not societally recognized. So do keep that in mind. So, and again, just kind of moving through this quickly, what do our clients experience when they're going through the loss of a pet and going through euthanasia? We do have a tendency, I think it's kind of human nature when we're talking about us being uncomfortable with grief. We have a tendency to want to push people from number 1 to number 4, and often with the best intentions, but we kind of want to, we can have a tendency to say like, oh, but he lived such a long life and, you've got so many great memories with him and like, and that's very true. I often will say those things, but I then temper them by saying, but that doesn't make it any easier. It's in fact, it makes it even harder to kind of find a new normal without them. So it's fine to say those things and to try and sort of, I guess, think of that enduring connection and remind owners of that. But we also have to be a bit more comfortable in letting people just sort of feel their grief and not push them too quickly to want to be at that point of,
okay,
being okay. Yeah. And if you do find yourself kind of pushing people to that point, I would maybe just kind of stop and reflect and sort of say, look, is that in the client or the family's best interest, or is it that I'm actually quite uncomfortable with their grief, and am I pushing them through it for me? Yeah. And then we were chatting the other day about some of the natural feelings that come along with grief.
Yes, I think for me, when I was clinical, anger was one of the ones that I would, as soon as somebody came at anybody in the clinic with any anger towards a situation, I was like, no, we don't have to deal with this. Whereas now, not saying it's okay for people to be aggressive towards you, that's different. But now I have the understanding that there is a lot of anger that comes with grief, and it is very normal. And if we can try to understand that that person is stressed, they're stressed, they're worried, they're grieving, they don't know another way to get that emotion out, I think I have a lot more patience for people now that present very angry about a situation, which I really did have to take a step back and look at what I was uncomfortable with, because I don't deal well with anger. And it's really eye-opening to try to shift your perspective when somebody comes from a place of anger. To think, if that was my pet and that happened, I can understand how I could be angry in that situation. So that one was something that I really resonate towards, I think.
I think it's also just realizing that it's not personal, like it's not directed at you. Obviously we put our boundaries up when it ever is directed at us, but just the feeling of anger in general is actually quite normal with grief, and so is guilt. So I think, you know, there's nothing more like heart-wrenching than when people, you know, you're at a euthanasia appointment and you are saying goodbye to a pet, and that family and that client is like, I'm so sorry, like I should have done this, I should have done that, and they're apologizing to the pet, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh my gosh, you have nothing to apologize for, you've done everything right, like we're doing such a kindness, like please don't apologize. It can be really helpful to, again, just recognize that it's not your job to fix this grief, it's not your job to take away any of these emotions. It's also not your right. Like, people are allowed to feel these emotions. They're allowed to experience them. We can reality check our owners and we can say, look, you know, as hard as this is, I really do believe that we've done everything we could for Fluffy, and we've helped them in the best way possible. So you can reality check them, but you do not have to try and attempt to take away those feelings, because those are their feelings to have. You know, they care so deeply about their pet, they're going to have these strong feelings as well. Relief, I guess, is another one which we've, I think, also all kind of witnessed, and that's when I will often say to a client, I'll rephrase it and say, you know, it's so normal to feel that relief. You're relieved that your pet is not suffering anymore, and you're relieved that that disease process is gone, you know, and you don't have to ever see your pet in pain again. You know, that's what you're relieved about, is that suffering and that pain is over.
And sometimes they're guilty because of the relief.
Yes, they will often feel a bit guilty because of the relief, and that's where your reality checking can kind of help them to appreciate, like, why are they feeling this way? Cool. So that was just, I guess, a couple of slides to help remind us of what our families and our clients are going through. But I think also just kind of helping us take stock of what we have to experience alongside them, particularly, you know, our long-term clients, but especially like what you were saying before about like the more traumatic grief. We experience that a lot with people that we don't know. They may have just rushed through the doors, and we have to be, you know, we're exposed to that. So it can help, again, just to kind of keep in mind these are what our families are experiencing and going through. And now we want to chat a little bit more about us and maybe some ways, because it is the nature of our profession and being caring individuals that we will be exposed to this emotion and to end-of-life care. So what can we do to kind of make it a little bit more palatable and a bit more sustainable? This is kind of coming off the back of your like ECC comment before with the secondary stress and trauma.
It's we will talk a little bit about debriefing a little bit later on, but being exposed to grief or trauma or suffering, which we do, we're in vet med, if we don't process what has happened, it has a compounding effect each and every time. The more that we carry on with our day, this thing's happened, that was really sucky, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, on to the next thing, which was my life in ECC. It compounds. And this is how we get into this compassion fatigue space, I guess.
Yeah, it's all the little things building up that you say you're going to deal with later, but don't.
Yeah.
And it's this idea of not completing your stress cycle. I'll have to pop the link in there, but there is a really good book that I listened to recently called Burnout, written by two sisters. And they talk about the stress cycle and how important it is, like, to recognize that it's a physiological reaction. You do actually then have your buildup of cortisol. You do then have to kind of physically do things about it. So, whether it's exercise, whether it is just even like controlling your breathing, whether it's that sort of full body clench and then unclench, like, we have to recognize that the buildup of this stress, and by just telling ourselves, like, it's fine, I've just got to get on to the next thing, we are like, it's piling high, and our body is not just going to ignore the fact that you have been stressed and released cortisol and like had a physiological reaction to that. It is going to build up over time. So that's definitely something to keep in mind in considering the physical ramifications of constantly like working yourself up and not being able to deal with it. We're going to talk more, I think, about like the ways that we can emotionally kind of break things down and cope with this buildup of stress and the emotional pull that this workplace has on us. But do keep in mind that there is very much a physiological and a physical component that we need to deal with as well. And so, secondary stress and trauma that we experience when witnessing our clients and our families go through things, that also then sort of builds into the compassion fatigue. And that's that emotional and physical erosion of just having that day-to-day care. Or in what we've sort of been chatting about the last couple of days, I do think for our industry, in my opinion, a big reason why we can experience compassion fatigue is often because we are very caring people and we don't always set ourselves up, or we're not always set up properly to show that care. We don't always have the training to know how to respond to people's emotions. And I think when you're a very caring individual, or even, you might sort of think I'm not all that caring. I don't consider myself to be the most compassionate person in the world, but I am a bit of a perfectionist and I do like to do things well. If we don't have the education and the understanding of how to show up for people, I think there's then the tendency to want to disengage and shut off. And I think that disengagement and that shutting off is equally what will sort of build up and lead to compassion fatigue, alongside the constant kind of drawing on our emotions and drawing on our need to respond to other people's needs.
Yeah, because that's what we're told, right? Yeah. We're really told, oh, you just harden over time. Oh, you just get used to it.
Yeah.
And it becomes second nature to you just move on with the next thing. So I think we all come into this thinking, I'm just naturally going to harden in this job and then I won't feel the compassion fatigue.
We think that's going to, like, I've heard plenty of people while I've been out in practice sort of saying to others, like, you'll get used to it, or you'll need to harden up, or you won't be able to do this job. And
that's not the case.
That's not, well, for me personally, to do this job, I had to actually do the exact opposite. Like, for me to find fulfillment in the role that I have in end-of-life care, I actually had to go the opposite and really tap into my empathy and my caring and come up with ways to do that sustainably. So I actually had to go the opposite direction, and that is what burnt away my compassion fatigue that I had unfortunately definitely built up when I was out in practice. For for me, that expressed itself as a lot of irritability was my main thing. Everything seems like a burden. Everything was just that little bit more frustrating. I really wasn't liking people. I wasn't really liking pets anymore.
Which scared your nurses?
I scare them anyway, but yeah, I was scaring them more.
And I think that the other thing that we wanted to point out as a big leading cause is that a lot of this comes from our own moral distress of the situation.
Yeah, specifically for veterinary medicine, for sure.
Yeah.
And what is interesting is that you said before how we kind of like just move through things and we're like, oh, that was sucky, you know, that's just how things are. They've done studies to show that veterinary professionals are actually really bad at identifying moral distresses. So we're really good at sort of saying, oh, that sucked, or that was really sad, or, you know, that's a bad situation. We're not very good at then stopping and sort of asking ourselves or talking to our colleagues about, why is that situation so distressing? Why has that really kind of pulled at my heartstrings? Why do I feel uncomfortable? And for us in this profession, a lot of the time it is because we've actually had to perform duties or not been able to perform duties that we wish that we had or hadn't had to. So euthanasia is obviously a big example of that. So not only having to perform euthanasia, but a really big one is not being able to perform euthanasia, like when people don't culturally agree with. Yeah, that is one of the massive triggers for us.
Even treatments for me.
Yeah.
I was in emergency for a very long time, but having patients in that I had decided it was cruel in my mind to be continuing treatment, despite the fact that it's what the family very much wanted, or vice versa. So I think that was a big one for me.
Yeah, not sharing the same kind of views as the family and like that misalignment of beliefs.
Yeah.
I think these are all massive causes of our emotional fatigue. So how do we kind of combat this? Do you want to start this one? You had a really good summary earlier when we were chatting about
yeah. So I guess we are talking about compassionate detachment now, and I really want to point out to people that by detachment we don't mean stop caring. We definitely don't mean stop caring. I think that we very much think, like I said a little bit earlier, of compassion fatigue coming from not being able to stop caring. What we're not saying is to stop caring. We're saying to make it so you are in an emotionally neutral place whilst caring the right amount.
Yeah.
We still want you to care. We absolutely do. It is fatiguing to be a caring, empathetic person and then trying to not be.
Yeah.
That's for me where a lot of it came in, because I was trying to emotionally distance myself or detach from a situation so that I wouldn't be too emotional about it. And that's what's draining. You're telling inherently empathetic, compassionate people, because we all are, because we have all come into veterinary medicine, you are telling them to not be who they are.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly exhausting.
Yeah. I think that's what I find a lot of people struggle with is wanting to care and wanting to show up for others, but not wanting to get burnt out in the process.
Yeah. We are so fearful of burnout and compassion fatigue before it even comes into our purview.
Exactly. And I guess the idea of compassionate detachment is just kind of shifting your approach and how you think about caring for others. So it's caring the right amount. So it's supporting others whilst also maintaining your boundaries. So I'm someone that often takes on other people's problems, and then I don't know when to let go and when to stop thinking about them and when to stop working on them. And I've had to very much, particularly taking on a palliative care role, because it's usually always kind of life and death, and usually always serious or important. I have had to take a step back and also recognize that I'm dealing with adults, and then I can educate them, I can support them, and I can give them love. But I can also step back and recognize that they have the inherent ability to make their own decisions and to be responsible for them as well, and to be responsible for their outcomes. So it's a work in progress, but for me to, again, avoid compassion fatigue and to care compassionately, but also not give too much of myself, I am getting better and working on trying to care for people, but also be like, okay, you gave them all the answers, you gave them all the solutions. It's now up to them to kind of pick those solutions up and to work through them. And I think this is a big way. Compassionate detachment, at the end of the day, we're trying to come up with ways to be present with people's pain and be present with people's discomfort and not take that pain on as your own. And a way to kind of do this and to maintain this compassionate detachment is to actually practice exquisite empathy, which is funny because I think compassionate detachment and exquisite empathy, you kind of think they're the opposite thing. But exquisite empathy, this concept has been shown to be quite protective against burnout and compassion fatigue. This is the idea that you are caring really deeply and authentically for someone, but you're doing it in a way that you're well boundaried. You know when you're signing up to care. When you are signing up to care, you're highly present, but you also know kind of when to stop. So this is something when, I do lunch and learns with clinics, I sort of say, look, you should be doing everything you can to ensure that the personnel that are present with euthanasias and are assisting with euthanasias are able to be highly present. They're not thinking about all the other things they've got to do, the calls they've got to make. They're not in and out of the room, because when you aren't highly present with a highly emotional situation, you will look back and be like, did I do that to the best of my ability? Like I ticked all the boxes, but I just don't feel like I actually gave enough of myself, or I was present enough for that family. And I think that for me is what, treating it like just another kind of task in the day and not kind of giving it the attention that it deserved, that for me would chip away. It would cause that emotional erosion and make me feel like I wasn't doing a good enough job.
Because you do sit there and you think,
I could have done.
Are they okay?
I could have done better.
Did I have to run out and answer that question from one of the nurses, or did I have to go help place that catheter? Was there somebody else that could have done that?
Yeah. So keep in mind the idea of exquisite empathy. It's not emotionally distancing yourself. It's not avoiding compassion. It's not that you don't allow the emotions around you to impact you. What it is you actually tapping into your cognitive empathy. So it's the idea that you've got emotional empathy and cognitive empathy. Some things are always going to tug at your heartstrings more. Like for me, if it's a whippet, if it's a family with a whippet, I'm probably going to be crying right there with you, because I'm going to unavoidably have my own emotional empathy tapped into. Or if it's someone that I can really relate to because we have similar past experiences, it'll tug more at my own kind of visceral reaction and my own emotional response. But the way that I try to get through and support as many people as I can is I actually try to tap into this idea of cognitive empathy, where I do my best to be really present with them, to try to really understand their situation and empathize with them, and relate to them as much as I can, but I don't actually take on their emotions, and I'm very present, so I am able to kind of work out the best way to show up for that family and do whatever I can to make their situation easier. But I also accept that I can't take away their emotion, and I also don't have to take on their emotion.
Yeah. And I think if you can have multiple people within the clinic that are doing this, so it's not just you having to do this all on your own, reception have their highly present, very well-boundaried, sensitive conversations.
Yeah.
Then, they go into the room and they see the vet, and the vet has the same. Then maybe the nurse comes in to help with paw prints.
Everyone has a bit.
Everybody has something, even if it's not a euthanasia, even if it's a surgery day, everybody's very present in their own little lane.
Yeah.
And then it moves on to the next person. And I think that's what we've been really lucky with Rest Your Paws, is that the vets have that time and that space
Mhm.
to be very well boundaried,
Yeah.
very present for the owners, and the nurses are the same.
Yeah.
And so I think that it will go a long way in
But and I will say the only reason that I have that ability to have well-boundaried support is because I have got a team of nurses who have set me up for success, and they've done their part extremely well. They've gotten the information from the family. They've prepared the family the best that they can. And then it's my turn. And then when my turn's done, I have my pet loss counselors after that. So everyone's got their bit, meaning that you can also disengage because you're like, I did my job, like my role and my job to the best of my ability, and now I'm comfortable handing it on to someone else. And that comfort level definitely comes from everyone sort of having the time to kind of upskill themselves and be comfortable in what their role is as well. And now, like, talking about teams and sort of chatting about ways to kind of make stronger and more resilient teams. We did want to sort of chat a little bit about this idea of a strengths-based approach in thinking, because it does take a village. It does, the better the culture in a clinic environment, the happier everyone is. So this idea of strengths-based training and having a strengths-based approach, it's definitely something you have to work at. you have to
practice. Everything's a practice. We are number 3 dot point. Faking it till you make it sometimes.
And the whole point of this and also the idea of like flexible thinking is not so that you're a saint. It is so that you actually have an easier time of letting things go and not letting things bother you. So it's actually, yes, it's makes you a lot nicer, I think, to other people, but it does actually make you a lot better at letting things go. And at the end of the day, this is about making our day-to-day lives just easier for ourselves. I have found that by challenging my own initial thoughts on people, like, are they really a bad person for doing this? Is this really the case? Like, someone calls and they're awful on the phone to you, and you want to be like, oh my God, that person is just the worst.
You don't want to deal with
what an average human. To stop and sort of be like, yeah, but man, I could tell like how stressed he is. Like, they must be they're so worried about their pet. Like, at least they've called us and they've actually tried to find help for their pet. So,
or that case has come in and you think, I wish they came in 3 days earlier.
Yeah.
I cannot believe the state of this animal. Reframing it and going, do you know what? They're here now.
Yeah. Thank God they came now, and now I can help this animal. Because again, it takes up too much energy to be angry and frustrated at the people around us. It really does. And I think one of the big reasons now that I do find that I'm less prone to kind of compassion fatigue and to being irritated by the general populace is because I find that I have worked on trying to be a bit more forgiving and understanding of other people, and it's honestly given me back a lot of energy and made me a lot less irritable.
It makes you resilient.
Yeah, that's it. And that's the whole point of us even chatting today, is so that we try and keep more people in this industry for longer and have them actually enjoying their time in it.
And this one hit me.
Yeah, it's good.
You love a quote.
I love
Laura
a quote.
loves a quote.
Love a quote.
And usually I'm like, yeah, that's cute. This one, I was like, oh.
That's a good one, huh?
Oh.
You can say it. You resonate it.
Can I? Okay. 2 things can be true. They can make a decision that is different to the one we would make, and they can still love their pet.
Isn't that great? So that's an idea of like flexible thinking. So it's not all or nothing. And definitely being in home care and actually going into the home and seeing a lot of people's brand of care has really helped me to recognize and appreciate that people love their pets differently. Pets have different roles in the family. People have different means, and people's version of care and their version of the best care that they can do is very different. And I'm very privileged in the sense that when I do go into the home and for euthanasia, often it's the first time I'm meeting these pets. But you do see them at their best and at their worst, in that you see just the sheer volume of love that they have for that pet at that time. I'm also always in awe of like my palliative care families, just the lengths that they go to, how they turn their worlds upside down to care for these pets. Like, you know, we prescribe medications and we give them the answers and what to do, but they're the ones that have to go home and do the work and try and pill these cats and try to, you know, build these ramps along the bed to try and get their pets up and try to encourage them to eat. And, you know, some of my palliative care,
6 times a day.
they've got like a buffet of food just trying to get these pets to want to eat something. And I'm constantly amazed at just the lengths of care that we go to for our pets. And it's just reminding myself that, yeah, they might care and look after and love their pets differently than how I love mine, but it doesn't make it any less special or any less valid.
And it doesn't matter if they do more or less than you would. There are some things that I know very well that I would not do for my cat because I know she's not a good candidate for it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I'd love her less than somebody that would do those things.
Yes, exactly.
Because I do love my kid.
Even if she is a devil.
Oh, she's a devil.
So debriefing. So we've got a couple more slides to get through.
Not venting. So sad. So sorry, guys.
We will preface this with the fact that we also value a good vent.
And I do call Laura, and if I need to vent, she knows. I start with, can I just? That's my vent sentence.
Yeah, and I am usually like pouring my tea at this point. I'm like, yes, tell me. So we love a good vent, but debriefing is not venting. Debriefing is actually trying to make sense of a situation and depersonalize a situation. And it's actually a way, I think, to just stop you from obsessively thinking about something. As someone with, you know, anxiety, OCD, intrusive thoughts are literally the bane of my existence. So coming up with ways to kind of share that burden and kind of have my thinking process out loud with someone, so that I can try to put things to bed and not take them home with me, you know, leave work at work. I find debriefing really valuable. Yeah. You mentioned that you did this in ECC.
Yeah, and I think this is something that we're really taught to do when there's a CPR. So we were so good. I had an incredible team that I worked with, and everybody was very good about debriefing after a CPR.
Yeah.
That is not always the most traumatic thing that's happened that day. And it doesn't even have to be in an ICU setting. It can be in GP. A case can come in that is quite traumatic for you. And we don't really put a lot of focus on debriefing with the team. And it is really important to do, even at the end of the day for 10 minutes, just chat to each other about what's happened in the day. It's not a vent. It is very structured. You should be able to reframe together. You should be able to talk about why. Maybe you discuss your distress, what your moral distress was.
Yeah.
Maybe you explore your own bias in the situation. So that's something that I am working on, is being very cognizant of my own bias that I have. And I think once everybody starts to talk about these situations, you'll see that most of the team probably feels the same way that you do. And so it is really nice in making you all feel really close as a team and maybe helping each other to reframe and reassess and think, okay, what did we do really well? What could we improve on next time this happens? And, you know, are we proud of the way we handled that situation?
Yeah.
So it is really important, and start that grieving process that sometimes must occur.
I think I debrief with members on my team about sort of euthanasia appointments and things. And often what comes up is, you know, maybe disappointment that things haven't gone quite the way that they wanted them to. They maybe haven't connected with a family quite the way that they wanted to, or maybe, you know, there was a reaction that they weren't expecting. And so we often sort of go through, we chat about the beauty of hindsight, but we also just kind of go over, okay, well, is there anything positive we can get from this? Like, did we learn anything that we can take out of this and move forward with? I also think it's really important to give people space to be disappointed. You're allowed to be annoyed and upset that it happened. It's just that you don't get to beat yourself up about it. That's not going to serve anyone.
And then you can leave it at work.
Yeah.
And then you've talked about it, and then you've debriefed, and you don't have to bring it home to your partners.
Yeah. And you start the next day fresh. Yeah.
Every time I see it, it's so proud.
See, I'm just focusing on yet another quote. You're all about the kitten.
I see a kitten.
I like this quote. So, did I navigate that situation in a way that I can be proud of? So again, when I'm having my like solo debriefing sessions, I reflect and I try not to be harsh on myself, but I try to sort of say, okay, like, am I proud of how I navigated that? Is there anything I would do differently? Is there anything that I could have done differently? Or was it just a series of unfortunate events? And the idea that in order to be sustainable in this industry where we have so much outside of our control, we do have to, have our sense of success actually latch on to the way we've navigated things rather than the outcome, because that's often outside of our control. All right, last couple of slides from us. Boundaries. Talking about,
it's a practice.
Talk about work in progress. Boundaries is definitely one of those. Anytime I get frustrated with a client, it's because I didn't respect my own boundaries, and I often like gave out my mobile phone number, or I, and that's on me. That's like, I have set myself up to be on tap and available to someone when I'm not, like, and I've ignored the whole well-boundaried, highly present rules of exquisite empathy. And they often, I'm contacted outside of when I have, delegated time to be present for someone. So it's really important to kind of respect and fight for your boundaries, purely because the alternative is that you do just keep on giving to a point where you've got nothing left, or what you do have is just irritability for people kind of reaching out to you. So setting your boundaries is really in everyone's best interest, particularly you.
Yes. Me personally, no.
Particularly you.
I was like, oh, she's looking at me. I think we talk a lot about boundaries in vet med.
Yeah. And the lack of them.
Yes. And I think that these are really good takeaways.
Yeah.
So stepping away from the client's active decision-making process. So you can give them all of the resources and the tools.
Yeah.
Like Laura said, you can give them everything that they need to make that decision. You don't have to be involved in it.
Yeah. And that goes back to me. Like, as I said earlier, I'm really bad at just like knowing when to just stop worrying about someone else's problem. You should never worry about someone else's problem more than they themselves are worrying about it. And I just that's my like daily mantra. But yeah, it's also respecting the fact that they are an adult and they also have the inherent ability to make choices and make decisions for themselves. And you have to, like, if you've set them up for success, you've given them that information, don't get caught up in the whirlpool of their decision making, and actually sort of set your boundaries by saying, look, this has been a lot. There's a lot for anyone to take on board. I think maybe it would be best for you to take the information, have some time to sit with it at home, and then we can keep the discussion going tomorrow when you've actually had time to kind of process and take everything in.
Yeah.
Cool. Summary. Sorry, we whizzed through some of those last slides because I'm highly cognizant of the fact that we
talk a lot.
We just love a good chit chat. This was the danger of having you come and do this with me.
So sorry.
Now we just talk and drink gin. So yeah, this is how we wanted to end this presentation, which is the fact that at the end of the day, it takes a very special person to do what you do, to be caring for others, to be caring for, the beautiful little patients that come through your doors, but also the family that surrounds them as well. We have that duty of care not only to the animals that we signed up for in this industry, but also to the family that's attached to their lead or attached to their carrier.
And your team.
Yeah, we have a real, I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things about this industry is the sense of camaraderie. Most of my friends are vets or nurses or within this profession because, they relate to you in a way that no one else really can.
Also, they're the best kind of people.
They're also the best kind of people. Why would we hang out with anyone else? So take homes from this, we really do, the whole point of just having this conversation and things that I would recommend to anyone is to just I drive a lot, so I listen to a lot of podcasts, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, just kind of expanding your knowledge of things like empathy and compassion fatigue and having more of an understanding of those things. It just, I think, helps us process things a little easier and kind of understand our own mental state, and it helps us be a bit more proactive in hopefully not kind of reaching the points of compassion fatigue and burnout. The more we know, the more comfortable we are just being present. I think that's the beauty of having learnt so much about the grief of others and the emotions of others and what people go through when they lose a pet. It's actually allowed me to do less in some ways because you do become more comfortable with just being present with those people and not feeling like you have to do everything. So for me, it's actually been very self-protective because I don't feel like I have to have all of the answers. I'm happy to just kind of be present. Also, just this idea of looking into and leaning into the idea of compassionate detachment and exquisite empathy, not closing yourself off, because I think it's very unnatural for most people in this profession to want to close themselves off to the pain and the feelings of others.
Yeah.
Be open to it, recognize it, but just don't take it on as your own. And that takes work. That's that's something you have to put into practice. And by no means am I not affected by, some of the patients and the clients that I meet. But at the same time, I'd be concerned that if I wasn't affected, I'd probably, I would have more concern if I felt nothing. It's just coming up with ways to be able to let go of the things that don't necessarily serve me or even serve the family I'm with. We've gone through some tools of strengths-based thinking and flexible thinking, nurturing those boundaries, water them every day.
Like the plants.
Like these plants, which I definitely didn't set up, so you could all admire. And also to kind of close this, we do want to leave you with yet another quote.
Because you thought you were coming for us to tell you how to not care as much.
We actually want you to care deeply in the present moment, and then give your client, give your family, give your patient the gift of letting go, in terms of being able to show up for other people, and give them your best self. When I leave a euthanasia appointment and I'm driving to the next family, I'm conscious of the fact that they deserve the best of me for that, for that next appointment, for that next family. They deserve me at my best. And I try my very best to not take the sadness from one family and bring that into another household, because they deserve a clean slate and they deserve to kind of have me at my fullest. Yeah. Okay, so this is our little feedback form.
I do this. It's so bright. So sorry. I'll have to be here for that.
I was worried as the sun set, if it would blind everyone. So we've got our feedback form, which we will send you. Please, if you've got the time, I know we're all very time poor, but it does really help us to know what you want more of, so we can actually tailor these webinars to you and bring you content that resonates and is relevant. We will also let you know how to get your CPD points. Do not worry. If you are stuck, please just email us. We're more than happy to kind of help you out with that. And a quick little sort of note, I did want to mention, we've recently sent out, you might see some of these booklets in your clinic, which every time I look at that dog, it makes me laugh.
So cute.
It's just
anybody that has ever met me that is watching knows that I love a decrepit Chihuahua, and I'm going to have a decrepit Chihuahua army one day. And so they are looking at it like, Danny put that on there. I didn't actually. really nice coincidence.
If you do get one of these books, you'll notice we're offering to come out and do lunch and learns and to chat to your clinic. So if you want to know a little bit more about us, if you want to even maybe talk more about, compassion fatigue and different kind of strategies that you can implement in the clinic to maybe make it a bit more of a healthy working place or a supportive working place. Like I said, we're no experts, but we can come in and talk about what we do know and what works for us. So please just let us know if you do want us to come in next year and maybe get to know you better. Questions and answers. Okay, beautiful. Let's have a look. We got some questions. Oh, we've got a lot of questions.
We have a lot of questions.
People want the prezzies.
Okay, great. I'm ready to be stumped.
All right, cool. What podcasts and books do you recommend? And I knew that someone would ask me this, and then I deliberately didn't write it down. So, okay, not deliberately, just to really stump myself now. A couple of the books that I have really kind of changed me, and like feel free to email me if you are so inclined, but there's one, and I'm going to butcher this name, but I believe it's Atul Gawande, and the book is called Being Mortal, and it's fantastic. I highly recommend everyone in this profession actually reads that book or listens to it. It's also a really good audiobook, so it's fine to listen to as well. There is another book called Burnout, which I'd have to quickly Google and let you know what it's called. It's by two sisters, but that one was really good in terms of helping with like the stress cycle. But if you just Google Burnout, you should be able to find it. Other podcasts that I listen to, honestly, a lot of the time I just type into what I'm currently thinking about, like compassion fatigue or cognitive empathy, and I kind of go on a bit of a tangent on Spotify, just finding that. You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy is also fantastic. So please like look into those ones, because they've definitely kind of shaped how I've approached things. Oh, and one that the list goes on. I drive a lot. I actually listen to all of these. I should
have written them down on the slide.
I should have put them on the slide. Another one that is awesome is The Courage to Be Disliked. It's hard. It's a hard listen because it's like got some heavy hitting truths, but The Courage to Be Disliked is very cool.
That's great.
Oh, cute. So we have not a question, but another quote for Laura. To add to my repertoire.
Love it.
When my dog died, a quote that really helped me let her go was, "Sometimes we suffer so that they don't." Oh, thank you. And yes, I love that, because that's kind of what I often will say to the families is like, we give them the gift of letting them go. And I'll often say, especially when children are involved, I say, look, just we've done the right thing by letting her go. It doesn't mean that you can't feel sad. We have to we have to say goodbye, and we have to stay behind. So we're allowed to be sad because we've done the right thing by letting them go. So I find that always helps with children as well. More questions. Oh my goodness. Asking for a friend. Would you have any recommendations or suggestions if you feel that there might be a person in your clinic going through compassion fatigue? Yeah, that's hard, because like I personally was going through compassion fatigue, and it wasn't until one of my nurses pointed it out to me, not in terms of saying you have compassion fatigue, but she actually said, look, you're not enjoying this anymore. Like you are more irritable, like you're cranky. And I was cranky. And she said, like, are you sure this is still the right fit for you? And I'll admit I got a bit defensive when they said that, but I am actually really grateful that they brought it to my attention, because compassion fatigue creeps up on you. And it wasn't until I got to a point where I was like, I'm actually not the best version of myself anymore, and I don't like the person that I am. I don't like the person that is treating my pets. And sorry, one of my nurses just messaged me and said, "You're always cranky." I was more cranky, I will argue.
She's a delight. Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, I do think it's worth, depending on the person and the situation, it is worth bringing it up and just saying, like, I've noticed some changes in you. How are you feeling? Are you checking in with yourself? Do you feel like you're getting the same sense of joy and pleasure in what you're doing? Because compassion fatigue, at the heart of it, you just stop getting the little joys every, day to day. Everything becomes harder and everything feels like such a burden. So I think it's worth saying something and just kind of just inviting them to talk about how they're feeling, rather than kind of accusing them of being a certain way. Just kind of encourage them to share with you how they may or may not be feeling.
Come from a place that is concerned but curious as to what's going on with them.
Yeah.
Come from a place
curiosity.
of, hey, yeah, I've noticed this. You've been really sad lately and you haven't been yourself, and I'm really worried. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
You want to come from a place that's not accusatory of your mood has changed. You're not happy in this place. You want to be very gentle and caring about it.
Yeah. Someone has also just pointed out that the book Burnout that I was talking about is actually by Amelia and Emily Nagoski. So thank you so much. And it is a really good book. Cool. More questions. Oh my gosh, we've never had this many questions. How can you try and get your team to understand and implement many of the strategies, especially as a nurse, and ways of thinking around euthanasia when they may think that what they do or how they conduct themselves is fine, or they don't feel that they have the time or the need to do many of these things other than just trying to act and lead by example? I think that's really hard. And honestly, we do a lot of nurses and receptionists and vets reach out to us because they are wanting ways to kind of make change in the clinic, and they're struggling because they don't see that everyone else has the same kind of viewpoint. I definitely think, oh gosh, I do love
it needs to come from the top.
Yeah, it does. I think you need to, I would be bringing it up with management in terms, I mean, you look after our culture. You're probably the best one to answer this. I shush and let you answer it.
Really difficult, like myself as a nurse, when I went into practice management in the GP clinic that I was in before Rest Your Horse, there was a nurse who was adamant from day dot everything had to change with the euthanasias, and she came to me and said, I want to do this because of this. And it just made sense to do it like that to me. I was like, great, you've put so much thought and effort into this. This sounds great. How do we do this? Oh, you've thought about it. And I think that it's something that has to come from the top. It's very difficult if you are a nurse on the floor trying to change the way that other people are doing things just by leading from example, because it can be anything from pre-euthanasia sedation protocols. It can be how you take the first phone call. It could be your consult room. It could be when you place a catheter. That can be a multitude of things. So I think taking it to management and being, again, coming from a place of curiosity, why is it that we do it this way? Is there a better way that we can do it? I've been thinking this.
I think something that can help as well is, like, obviously everyone's got a lot on their plate. So if you come to them not just with problems, but you actually come to them and say, these are some things that I've been thinking about that might help improve things. So if you've actually already come to them with some answers and some things that you think might help, that can make it a lot easier for it to be implemented, because then they don't think, oh my gosh, that's another thing that I have to work on. If you're like, I've actually put some thought into this and here are some things that I think might be able to help.
Or we can come and do a lunch and learn for your clinic.
Yeah, or we can come and do a lunch and learn.
Or we can do it for you.
Talk you through it. That kind of rolls into this question here. So how do you navigate a negative euthanasia situation, e.g. client not happy with the whole process, vet rushing, receptionist trying to get payment when client is incredibly upset? Again, I would highly recommend you contact us for a lunch and learn, because this is very much what we chat about and we try and workshop in our lunch and learns. I think our biggest obstacle is time. We're also time poor. So something that can be done to kind of avoid a lot of issues at the time of the euthanasia is actually trying to pre-plan as much as possible through like emails and setting the owners up with information of what's to come. But also then when things go poorly like this, it's often damage control. So it's then also having templates and things that you send after the fact to follow up, to make sure that the clients like feel supported after the fact. And if things haven't gone quite the way that they wanted them to, they've also got a chance to debrief with you. And then they have, you're able to give them resources of who to maybe talk to moving forward, like pet loss counseling. Often we can recover from a lot of things because, again, it's not the words that we say or what we don't say. It's often the intent and the emotion that we leave a client with. So sometimes you can do a bit of damage control after the fact by like checking in with people and having a really good kind of follow-up phone call or follow-up email that you send, or nice mementos that you send people and that might also help owners sit back and go, okay, like it wasn't the best experience, but I could tell they were rushed, and I can see that they did, they do really care because they've taken the time to kind of do this follow-up with me. So
and I mean, it's one of those things that payment has to be taken. When that payment needs to be taken is something that we can talk about, but also, again, that reframing. Did the client think the vet was rushing because they were busy, or was something going wrong? Were they trying to rush through that process because that animal was agonal or, actively trying to die, and they were trying to move that situation along a little bit quicker? So just not necessarily as a team getting really irritated with each other about, okay, now the client's mad because you did something wrong and you did something wrong and you did something wrong, but having that debrief, what could we do better? How can we set ourselves up for success in the next situation?
Yeah, and I think that the great thing about debriefing is that no one feels targeted. And if you debrief in a way that it's regular, rather than just like, oh, we're having a debriefing session, someone must have stuffed up. Like if it actually is part of your team culture, then it's no one suddenly panics and thinks, oh my God, what have I done wrong? Why are they calling a debriefing session? It just becomes a regular thing that you do sort of on a weekly or fortnightly basis. Next question. So recently there has been a rise in clients dropping off pets and choosing not to be present for any part of the euthanasia process, and also a rise in euthanasia of young pets with treatable conditions due to cost constraints. I find that these cases have a greater impact on my mental health due to moral distress, as you said. Do you have any advice? So reframing, obviously, and trying to kind of let go of some of the judgment towards the clientele that are having to do this. The caveat, though, is that there's only so much we can take, in that if you are constantly being exposed to moral distress and you are constantly being put in a position where you are making decisions that you don't agree with, it will chip away at you, and you can reframe, and that will act as a bit of a buffer, and you can have that flexible thinking. But constant exposure to this, especially if like your spidey senses are tingling and you're like, I'm getting to a point where this is getting too much, I would sort of maybe take a step back and sort of ask yourself honestly, like, how much more of this can I take? Because if this is realistically things that aren't necessarily going to change for your clinic, then you do have to put yourself first and prioritize your own well-being, which again, that's a hard thing to kind of navigate and tread. But again, like all the self-help books and the reframing and things that we've talked about isn't going to kind of completely stop burnout and compassion fatigue if you're constantly having to be sort of morally distressed and make decisions that you don't agree with. The treatable conditions one, that's quite hard to, I mean, in this economy, like this is something that isn't necessarily going to change. So that's again why I would sort of encourage you to be honest with yourself about how much of this you can sustain long term. For the clients that are dropping their pets off and choosing not to be present for any part of the euthanasia process, sharing a personal story, one of my family members actually wanted to do this for their pet. And I can guarantee you that this person loved this pet more than anything in the world. And I don't think they've ever had a bond with a pet like they had with this one. And I thankfully was able to counsel them and get them to understand that I think dropping them off to the clinic probably would have broken their heart. And it also would have been highly stressful for that pet in question. But again, I was only able to kind of get them to change their mind by being able to have that conversation ahead of time with them. So I think with those pets that are dropped off, it's hard, but try to avoid thinking that that person should have done better or that person should have been there with that pet, because some people do not know how to navigate their own grief, and they are so consumed with guilt about having to make the decision to euthanize that they just cannot even be there. And I actually feel deeply, deeply sorry for people that are so uncomfortable and so torn by the decision of euthanasia that they can't be present with their pet. And I don't think it's fair of us to have the mentality that they should be present, because again, what I would choose for my own pets is very different for other people, and it doesn't mean that they love their pet any less. So I think you can ease that moral distress by, again, trying to understand where that owner might be coming from and not knee-jerk reacting to the fact that they're leaving and I would never leave my pet. Another thing, though, I would maybe look at is what your clinic protocol is for pre-euthanasia sedation. So,
I was going to say that.
Yeah, trying to kind of have really good pre-euthanasia sedation protocols where you can, like I had owners in clinic that weren't comfortable being there with the euthanasia, but I was able to say to them, okay, well, what I would love to do is give him some medication to have him be able to fall asleep in your arms, and I can promise you the last thing he's going to remember is being held by you, but then I will take him and my nurse and I are going to give him a beautiful send-off and he's just going to continue to drift off to sleep. And the owner was like, yep, that's exactly what I want. I'm sorry, but I can't be there for the whole thing. And I said, that's absolutely fine. As I said, he is going to fall asleep in your arms, and that's all that he's going to know. So I think, again, being, and I have had people in the home where they've said they haven't wanted to be there, and then when they've seen them go to sleep beautifully and just literally fall asleep in their bed, they actually turn to you and they're like, actually, I do think I can stay. And I've had owners like just thank me profusely, crying that I was able to build up their confidence and allow them to stay. So I think it's also, it does come down to how we perform euthanasia and being able to ease them into what's going to happen and ease them into the process and really get them comfortable with the idea that he is going to fall asleep. You know, when we perform euthanasia in the home, we don't touch an animal until they're asleep. Okay, we don't place an IV line until they're asleep, so they're completely unaware of that. And people, I think, when they drop off those pets, it's often because they don't want to see them struggle. They don't want to see you fight them to place an IV line. So don't do any of those things.
Also, like a real misconception with a lot of people of what that euthanasia will look like.
Yeah.
And a lot of us on the phone are saying things like we give them an overdose of an anesthetic. So when they're thinking about their pet's last moments, they're thinking of what an overdose looks like on TV. And they don't want to be there for that.
Yeah.
They don't understand that the sedation that we're going to give is going to be so incredibly gentle and peaceful, and that they are going to fall asleep. That's most of the time not what they're thinking.
And I will say, and as you said, having to, you know, even euthanizing patients that are younger and might have treatable diseases, the way that I am able to do this job and do hundreds of euthanasias is because of how I get to go about doing it. It's because I am able to put that pet to sleep and then, you know, essentially work with them so that they do drift off and there's very minimal anxiety and very minimal pain. So the technique and the way that we perform the euthanasia is very, very important for it to be sustainable for us in terms of our mental health. So I think some things that I will point out is maybe, and again, reach out to us. I'm more than happy to chat about this in detail. We share all of our sedation techniques. We share how we perform euthanasias, but is maybe looking at how you are performing a euthanasia. Because I've had several euthanasias where I haven't morally been on the same page, and there has been a part of me that's been uncomfortable with that euthanasia. But at the back of my mind, I've been able to say, you know what, I'm doing this in the best way that I possibly can, and I'm carrying it out in the best way that I possibly can. So maybe it's also worth looking at how you're actually performing the euthanasias, and how you're preparing owners and how you're informing them of how the euthanasia process is. And that might help to have more people feel confident to be there with you. And when they're not there with you, maybe you'll pick up some tools in being able to actually, give a really kind of easy, gentle passing for that pet, which does ease, I think, the pain
Yes.
a little bit for us. Yeah. Another question. You mentioned earlier that being present as a compassionate witness is enough rather than the words you say. How do we navigate this with a phone call situation where our words are so important, and how do we guard ourselves during these difficult and highly emotional conversations? Yeah, I mean, that's really a tough one. It's a lot easier, I guess, when you're in the room with someone, because often you're like 70% of our communication is body language, right? So often we don't have to say too much, and I can still convey a great deal of empathy because of my facial expressions, my how I lean in, touching the owner's arm, that kind of thing. So, sometimes I won't have the right words to say, but I can squeeze their shoulder and show them that I care that way. So yes, it can be hard on the phone. I think, sometimes just being honest and I have had moments where I've also been stumped, and I've said, look, I really don't have the words to say. All I can sort of say is that I'm here for you, I'm listening to you, and I, when you're ready, please just continue and speak, and we'll try and kind of move through this.
Acknowledge that it's a really difficult situation that they're having to call.
I think, and sometimes that can really help an owner to be like, even this person who answers these phones daily or is used to this kind of care, is acknowledging and commiserating with me how hard this is, and that validates what I'm going through.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of knowing where our words are so important, knowing the right things, we actually, if anyone's interested, we did recently for VetWorks do a nice little kind of script, which is specific for phone conversations. So we do actually have examples of things to say, like when you're giving the ashes back, when you're having to book in a euthanasia, when you're trying to triage them on the phone and they're crying and really deep in their grief. So we do actually have a handout that we can more than happy to share with you. So please just reach out if that does sound like something that interests you, because we do appreciate that it is, in order to do our jobs, in order to feel like we're doing our jobs well, it's almost like having words to say are like our armor, right? They allow us to kind of feel confident in doing this job because we have got some examples of things to say.
And we're not caught off guard.
Yeah.
And then think back, oh no, should I have said that? Was that the wrong thing to say?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Okay, more questions. Give me a second.
So many questions.
Okay, cool. Okay, 4 people for prizes. I'm being told I have to pick people for prizes.
Oh,
my
there's
goodness, there's so many. Okay, I actually thought that the question that we answered.
Now they're all out of order.
Now they're all out of
terrible.
Order. I feel like definitely the question we had about the moral distress. So that was,
where did it go?
I know, sorry, there's like a list of 30 questions in front of us, and we're like, our eyes are darting around the screen. Definitely one of the winners is
Caitlin will tell us.
This is why we have Caitlin.
Can you find that
like
question in the background?
Definitely the question that we spent a lot of time chatting about, the one about having to euthanize animals that are younger for financial concerns, and also owners that don't want to be present. I think 100%.
Also, just to answer the one that I can see, yes, we do offer lunch and learns for clinics Australia-wide.
Yeah, we do.
Sorry, I thought I would answer that one while we're in here.
Please do. I don't know. They're asking us to pick them. I would just say like the 4 that we answered. Did we answer more than 4?
I think we did.
I'm sorry, Caitlin, but they're not highlighted
Caitlin,
anymore.
We're just going to have to probably email people. We're going to have to go through all of these, and we've got not long left.
Sorry, Caitlin. We will email you if you've won one of the prizes. We're just flailing.
Everybody was ready to stump us. That was me. I jinxed that, didn't I?
Oh, we're just going to answer we're just going to ignore Caitlin's desperate plea for us to do what we're told.
We'll email those out.
We'll email you guys.
We'll email some surprise gifts out. We'd love that.
I'm just going to answer. We've got a few more minutes, so if anyone's still sticking around, we'll answer a few more questions. How to deal with euthanasias of dogs that are due to aggression towards other animals or children, but the dog is sweet to us. Yeah, that's hard.
Sweet to us, the owners.
Sweet to us, or sweet to adults. I think okay. That is a hard one. And look, a lot of the pets that I've euthanized for aggression, it's because they've become unpredictable, or they have attacked other pets, or they just can't trust them with their children. But yeah, they are lovely to their owners or to people that they know. The way that I personally deal with it is that I do strongly advocate for an in-home euthanasia, so that I can do it in a way that is, I can take as much time as I need. I can rely on oral sedation. I can make sure that pet's asleep before I even enter the home, just so that I can sort of console myself and say that he just fell asleep and the last thing he remembered was the cheeseburger or the chicken nuggets or whatever I brought for him, and he wasn't stressed and dragged into a clinic, and and I don't have to then I don't have that stress on the entire team as well that might know and appreciate this pet. So I think I try to do a bit of damage control by having it be done in as beautifully as I can. I mean, I do that for every pet, but definitely for the younger ones who, it may just be that they're not in the best circumstances for their personality or their breed.
And it's okay that sometimes things are just sucky.
Yeah.
And it's hard and it's not fair. That's okay. That's okay to feel like this isn't fair.
Yeah.
For me, my immediate reframe would be, what about those other animals that have been attacked and future animals or children that are not safe?
Yeah.
But it still sucks. It still sucks, and that's allowed to suck. And that can be something that you can say, I'm allowed to feel my feelings. This is hard for me, but
I can rationalize it, but I can still appreciate that it sucks.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of debriefing, is that you are allowed to feel your grief. We're not like advocating toxic positivity. You are actually allowed to be disappointed.
Yeah.
It's just that you might be able to find some comfort and kind of be able to get through it a little bit better with that conversation.
Yeah.
Another question, I often find people show relief when I say to them that I think they're making the right decision, but is this taking on some of the responsibility of the decision? Not at all. Not at all. The number one thing that owners want from us during euthanasia or during end-of-life care is for us to build up their confidence and to reassure them that they are doing the right thing. They never feel as helpless as they do when they are having to navigate euthanasia. Please, please, please reassure them that they're doing the right thing, that we are doing the right thing. At the end of the day, as the vet, I'm the one giving the euthanasia solution. So it is a we decision, and I will 100% every person that I come across, even if my nurses have already given them all the love and reassurance in the world, I still come in there and I reassure them, and they still thank me for it. So if there is one thing that you do for an owner, it is reassure them that they're doing the right thing. You are still a professional. They still want your professional opinion. They still want your opinion as the other human being involved in saying goodbye to that pet. So by all means, please reassure them that they're doing the right thing.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Okay. How do you navigate and help someone who deeply regrets having their pet euthanized, as it was a traumatic experience for them and their pet, even though sedation was given, and regrets not now having further procedures done to potentially help the disease process? Look, I think
offer pet loss counseling.
Yes, that's Danny just says it as it is.
I was like, that's 2 minutes.
Pet loss counseling. That's you have conversations with these owners and conversations with these people, and then you sort of say to them, especially if you're going around and around and you can sense that you're having the same conversation and you're not getting through to them, you say, look, this is a lot. This is so much for anyone to be able to go through. I definitely don't want to diminish what you're going through, and I want to give you all the time in the world. But I'm going to be honest, I don't think that I have, I know I don't have the expertise to sort of be able to help you move any further in this. But again, I want to make sure that you get the attention and the help that you deserve to be able to process and talk through this. Would it be okay if I gave you the information for some pet loss counselors to be able to talk this through? Because again, it's recognizing when like you've done all you can, and this is not your role. This is moving into that compounded grief stage where you do need to kind of be referring and getting them in touch with someone who can then take on that burden of care. Otherwise, you are burning yourself out and you won't have enough to give for the next family who you probably can help, like hugely.
Yeah.
So that's a case of being able to recognize when like my watch is over, I'm going to give you the resources to be able to get help. We have to go. It's going to kick us off. We've got 5 seconds.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so
we'll send
much.
you some prezzies.
Bye.
The world is on the brink of war.